Welcome. Welcome to this candidate forum for Sunnyvale City Council. I'm Roberta Holloman, a member of the League of Women Voters, and I'll be moderating tonight's forum. The League of Women Voters hosts forums like this to allow voters to see the candidates and hear them address questions of interest to the public. Our goal is to enable voters to learn about the candidates so they will make informed choices. The League of Women Voters never endorses or opposes a candidate or a political party. 3 seats of the Sunnyvale City Council are up for election this November. There are 2 candidates for each seat, and all 6 candidates are here tonight. They will be seated on the dais and question 1 seat at a time. As you see, we have seat 1 up right now. And that will make it easier for you to see who's running against whom. Voters may vote for 1 candidate for each seat. The candidate that gets the most votes for his seat in November will be elected to the council. The candidates have agreed to a format and ground rules for tonight's forum. The candidates will have 60 seconds to respond to the questions. A timer seated in the front of the room will give candidates visual signals to help them pace their responses. We have allowed time for rebuttals. Each candidate is allowed 2 30-second rebuttals. The candidates have been given 2 rebuttal cards to indicate to me that they wish to make a rebuttal to something the other candidate has said. And And I need to tell the candidates that this is for rebuttal only and not a new statement or a continuation of a former statement. The questions for tonight's forum were developed by a team of League members based upon their own research and questions submitted by the public via email. We thank the public so much for the wonderful questions you have sent in. Since we received ample questions from the public in advance, we are not collecting more questions from the audience tonight. The forum is being recorded and can be seen by going to the League's website, lwvcs.org. The ground rules ask candidates not to use forum recordings for campaign purposes. We also encourage the audience not to record the forum because we want it to be shown in its entirety. Finally, we ask the audience to refrain from displays of support or opposition. Please hold your applause until the end of the forum. We'll now turn our attention to the candidates. Thank you for running for this office. So often you hear us ask the candidates for an opening statement or a closing statement, but this time we're incorporating those ideas into the questions we ask them. So here is the opening first question, and I will start with Mr. Alexander. What do you bring to the City Council that Sunnyvale needs but doesn't have?
Thank you for everyone being here tonight. I think that it speaks volumes that so many people actually came out. That is giving me hope that you guys want something different. My name is Henry Alexander, and I'm running on behalf of the citizens and the families of Sunnyvale. As a Bay Area native, 13-year resident of Sunnyvale, my wife of 21 years and I raised our families and educated them in the public school systems. Now, I've had a 6-year commission background, and I've also been committed to the community. And what I think I bring to this election that's different is a community sense, someone who is just like you, who has raised their family here in Sunnyvale, and someone who is committed to focus on the residents first. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Larson.
Yes, and thank you as well for everyone coming out tonight, either coming here or tuning in, because it's so important to pay attention to elections and be informed as voters. So some of the things that I bring to City Council, and I would have to say that City Council already has these since I'm already on the council. One is over 8 years of experience with Sunnyvale government, first on the Planning Commission and now on City Council, but also my grassroots background. Before I was appointed to Planning Commission, there was an issue in my neighborhood. I got involved with my neighbors. We successfully persuaded City Council to change a project that was coming in our neighborhood. So I've personally experienced what that's like to approach City Council for the first time with an issue. I also have a strong record on housing during my last 5 years. And I'm very much looking forward to building on the momentum, the success that we've had over the last 5 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with you, Mr. Larson. What is the most important priority for Sunnyvale City Council to work on in the coming year, and why?
I would say absolutely the most important priority is housing. There are so many other issues that get tied into housing. Traffic, for example, is fundamentally a housing issue. If people can't live near their jobs, then they have to commute long distances. That creates congestion. Those are very expensive highway miles to maintain, and that's less time they have with their families. As climate change becomes more important, resolving climate change becomes more important. Being able to rebuild our housing stock to be more energy efficient, to be more water efficient is absolutely crucial. And then if you just look at the overcrowding that's happening and the lack of affordability of housing, obviously that's a supply issue, not enough housing. So housing is the #1 issue.
Thank you. Mr. Alexander.
Thank you. I think that the growth of this city is what's most important in the fact that there has been an abundance of developer growth and business growth within the city, which has exacerbated some of the problems that we see in Sunnyvale. Now, I believe that it's really hard to make high-density housing work in a culture that we live in Sunnyvale in the Bay Area. So you have to question, what is your job stability? Are you going to move every time that you get a new job? With a family, where does your spouse work? Where are your kids going to school? So it's really important that we look at the entire infrastructure. I'm not a no-growth candidate. So I'm fully in favor of people wanting to live and raise their families in Sunnyvale, but it has to be done right. It has to be done correctly, and it also has to be done with some sort of purpose. So it's not going to affect the safety of the residents, nor is it going to affect the overcrowding of the schools. Thank you.
Thank you. And with next question, Mr. Alexander, we'll start with you. In Sunnyvale, the median rent is $3,000, and the median home price is $1.9 million. What strategies would you champion to help make Sunnyvale a more affordable place to live?
I think we have to look at how we've gotten into this dilemma. Now, rents are going to go up no matter what. We live in probably the best weather that you can imagine. We live in a place called Sunnyvale for a reason, right? And so that being said, I think that it's a bigger issue than supply and demand. To suggest that by building where there's high-density instances where people are going to be stacked on top of each other, that's just not the right thing to do. So I think that looking at it from a larger perspective, we have to look at the affordability of maybe some below-market rate housing, the supply of those things. I think that for housing, it's going to continue to go up because this is what we live in, and it's not going down anytime soon. But we have to fix the infrastructure to make sure that it works.
Thank you. Mr. Larson?
Yeah, so we have created a very attractive community here, and that attracts people, and that's creating some of the supply and demand imbalance. Also, the Silicon Valley economy is booming. Even if Sunnyvale were to stop building housing, we have jobs being created all over the region. This is a center of excellence for technology in the world. So people are coming here whether or not we're building housing. If we don't build the housing, we get overcrowding and we get very expensive housing. Some of the things we're looking at are zoning to cluster more housing near the Caltrain stations and along El Camino. We want to protect our existing single-family neighborhoods because those are wonderful, but we also want to put new housing near transit so people can use public transit. The village center concept where we put apartments above neighborhood shopping centers so you can live and shop in the same area or downsize within your neighborhood, and also affordable housing is very important as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And so we'll start with you this time. State Proposition 10 provides for cities to establish local rent control policies. Do you support or oppose Prop 10, and why or why not?
So I oppose Prop 10. I think that even if Prop 10 were to pass, I think the state legislature would come back with some additional changes for kind of the bounds on rent control. And I think it's very unknown what that would be. So I prefer to stick with the known that we have. And I'm also very concerned about discouraging the development of new housing. If we were to, in some scenarios with Prop 10 passing, I think it's very likely that we would see many fewer housing projects move forward. And I think that would just make this an even more exclusive area, and I think it would be hard to maintain the diversity of income levels and backgrounds that we have in this community that really make us a complete community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Alexander?
Yeah, I would support this repeal only if there was an improved version of the state law. So I think we align in that. But the law, I think, should be amended to prevent the establishment of rent control units for a year that's more current than 1995, in my opinion. So the study issue that has come about based on the Mountain View ordinance model, I think it's a good start. But I think we need to also explore what's the manageable amount. Where are the elderly and disabled having a reasonable opportunity to continue living in the city where they've established their lives in? When that's taken away, you have the potential for gentrification, and that's not what anyone wants to see. So when I'm elected, I will make a priority to seek any additional community input and provide solutions that will help manage this very real issue.
Thank you. And we'll start with you again, Mr. Alexander. What budget challenges do you see the council needing to address in the next 3 years?
I think for the budget, I think what we need to start looking at is some of the wages within the city. I think that's a budget issue that is a hot item. And it's not to say that anyone should be having their pensions taken away, but I believe that we should start looking at the privatization of this, and from the standpoint that people who are coming new into the city as employees, perhaps that is something that they would do rather than the people who have pensions that were promised these pensions should still receive them. I'm all for that, but I also believe that by doing so, looking at these types of things, that we can look at other issues that could affect the city for the long term, more than 5 years from now. But I think it's something that we definitely need to look at.
Mr. Larson?
Thank you. Yeah, so the city has been paying very close attention to pensions, and budgets. We've hired our own actuary to give us better projections than CalPERS, more realistic projections. We have put in place a number of changes, such as multiple tiers of pensions, so that the newer employees coming in already have a different pension than the existing employees. They will take probably, we're projecting 15 years for that to really get us over the hump. Our pension costs will be going up for about 15 years, and then they'll come down on the other side. That would be a great time to be on city council, but for now we have to kind of tighten our belts and stay the course. It's challenging because costs go up faster than revenues. For example, our sales tax revenues are flat to slightly down, even though property tax is going up. And so we really have to be very fiscally prudent. I really want to keep with our 20-year financial budgeting model to keep us on track. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Larson, proposals have been made to change Sunnyvale's election system to district elections in which residents in geographical areas would choose their representatives. Do you support or oppose this proposal?
So the driving factor behind this proposal is the California Voting Rights Act, and the goal is to get councils that more represent the demographics of our community. And I'll admit, that's a problem right now. Our current council is all white and only one woman out of 7. However, because Sunnyvale is so blended demographically, I don't see how you would draw districts that would enhance the demographic representation of City Council. We already have good representation from all parts of the city. When I was first elected to council, we had 3 council members from northern Sunnyvale, 3 from central, 1 from south. Now we have 1 from the north, 3 from central, 3 from the south. So it does change over time, but on average, it's very representative, very blended. I think with districts, you get geographic diversity, but you don't get demographic diversity. And so I think we really need to look at the other impediments that are stopping good people, good candidates from running for council.
Thank you. Mr. Alexander?
I think it's not the question of what we support, it's what we've been seeing the pattern as being. In other cities, what we are seeing is that people are bringing these cases to cities and saying that there should be a district election format, and these people are winning. And this is the path that Sunnyvale is on its way to do. We've also seen that there has been a actual complaint that has been registered to the city that says that there is a disproportionate amount of Asians who are represented on the council. And so these are things that we can stop immediately before we have to go through any expensive court costs to take something to court that inevitably might just end up being the future based on even cities as close as Santa Clara and any of the other cities around the state. So I think that from the standpoint of what it is that we can and want to do, it is what it is. We are in this climate now, and it's going to go to district elections.
Thank you. Mr. Alexander? Sunnyvale currently has a housing mitigation fee that charges commercial development and impact fee that goes into an affordable housing program. MTC, the Metropolitan Transit Commission, is exploring a regionally assessed commercial development fee for affordable housing. Do you agree or disagree with this kind of regional fee?
I think that looking at it from a standpoint of what we need to focus on, Bay Area is an interconnected web of cities. So we have to work with neighboring cities to do something. Now, relying on development and developers to finance that might be a cause for celebration in certain points, but when those developments start to decrease, then where are we getting funding from? So this is something that we need to look at from a larger perspective than to just rely on the funding of taxes from development. We need to perhaps look at the bigger picture and look at other explorations of budgets so that we can look at our spend at a very closer and more prudent way.
Thank you. Mr. Larson?
Yeah, I would prefer to keep the funds established at the local level because every city is different. Sunnyvale is very different than San Jose. We're different needs and different economic environment. So I think each city should set what is appropriate for the city. Sunnyvale has been a real leader on housing. I hear that when I go around the Bay Area. Other cities say, hey, wow, Sunnyvale, you're doing a really good job. How are you doing that? How did you get this program in place or that program? So I'm really proud that we're actually on the cutting edge, and I think if we had a regional fee, that would actually be a step back potentially from where we're at. I would also get concerned about the politics involved, that the bigger players, I'm not going to say any names, but I think you know which cities I'm talking about, would be able to pull more of the money into them. And I'd rather use the money locally so that we benefit Sunnyvale workers, Sunnyvale residents.
Thank you. So we'll start with you with this question. Would you share what significant contributions, if any, to your 2018 City Council campaign were from PACs? If so, what PACs?
So I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, so I'm just kind of going off the top of my head. So I've gotten campaign contributions from a number of different sources. Some of the PACs are local PACs, Sun PAC, which represents local businesses, several different labor organizations, Silicon Valley Association of Realtors recently gave me a contribution. However, I would also say that I am my own largest contributor to my campaign, contributing more than all of those PACs combined. So I've got skin in the game. I'm very committed to this. I've also gotten a lot of contributions from individuals. Probably 83% of my contributions I calculated earlier today were actually from individuals, from over 80 different individuals. So a lot of donations that are 3% or less of what I'm collecting.
Thank you. Mr. Alexander?
None. And I will continue on that a little bit. I think that it's a very touchy subject for a lot of people. Again, I've said this before. Please don't think that when people are donating from a PAC that this is money that's going into the person's pocket. This is about how you're getting favor from these people who are providing you the funds to actually win and run a campaign. So mine have been all from residents, so I'm beholden to you. I can't say that for me that it makes more sense to do it that way than any other way. However, I think that from the standpoint of how you're voting for certain projects that come up, especially when they're financed by the same people who have financed your election, that's when you're not above reproach, and I think that should be called the question.
Thank you. I think you know which one I'm going to call on next. So, Mr. Alexander, we turn to traffic for a minute. Besides the 101-237 Matilda Interchange project currently underway, what other road improvements or transportation projects do you envision to bring traffic relief to North Sunnyvale in light of anticipated additional development?
Yeah, that's going to be a fun one, and I think that when I'm on council, that's going to be one of the major priorities. I think that we're going to have to start looking at what it takes for the city to look at something a little bit out of the box, like perhaps free shuttles where people are taken where they want and need to go, and make them electric or hybrid so that they reduce greenhouse gas. And we can pilot these routes to see what works and doesn't work, but we do have to take some sort of proactive measure in order to ensure that we have better traffic flow. But what I disagree with is creating more density of development and high-density residents, especially in those areas, and expect for people to live, work, and shop in one compact area. That's just not how we function in this city. So I think that we need to explore and be proactive and think out of the box rather than what we've been doing for several years.
Thank you.
So on Lawrence Expressway, we've already started working with the City of Santa Clara and the county as well to do grade separation, where we would lower Lawrence Expressway so it goes underneath the roads that are crossing, so you don't have signal lights there. That would make a huge difference for traffic on Lawrence Expressway. Also, we're talking with VTA about setting up a shuttle in the Peary Park and downtown areas, connecting those areas, an on-demand shuttle. That's already in progress, we're talking about. And we have a huge opportunity as we take another look at the Moffett Park area north of 237 for community benefits. Google has purchased a lot of property there. They have been very proactive about finding other ways to get their employees around, and I think it's a tremendous opportunity to get community benefits from them and others in their in that area as they want to modernize their offices to also get a benefit for North Sunnyvale. And finally, we're updating our bicycle master plan. We can fill in the gaps in our bicycle network. Thanks.
Thank you. Sunnyvale has led the effort to create Silicon Valley Clean Energy, which now provides 100% greenhouse gas-free electricity to our community and other cities nearby. What additional changes are needed to significantly reduce our community's carbon pollution and make the city more resilient to climate change?
Yeah, so I think starting Silicon Valley Clean Energy, that was a huge home run. I was very excited to be part of launching that. I'm actually the Sunnyvale's alternate on the board for Silicon Valley Clean Energy right now. Now that we have that clean electricity, we can start putting it to use. For example, swapping out natural gas appliances for electric appliances. There are some very good space heating options, water heating options coming along, so put that clean energy to use there. I think also if we can start to require more electric vehicle chargers at offices. That's a great way to use the abundant solar electricity that we now have in the state of California and actually store it in the vehicles so it can be used later in the day when the sun has gone down. It also helps us reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. So I think that's a huge win. And working further with Silicon Valley Clean Energy, they're working on ways to encourage folks in general to become more energy efficient. Thank you.
Mr. Alexander?
I don't think that the council has done a great job at getting to zero emissions within the city as far as the solutions behind what we can do and all those types of things. I think from the city perspective, we should look at how much we are consuming in a general sense. This is going to take all of our efforts, and the city can lead the way by being more forthright and saying, hey, this is what we can do to incentivize this type of thing. This is what we can do to provide these resources so that you can make the choice to be more efficient. The city can also demand that it have all electric vehicles and including these electric chargers in more reasonable places, not just where people are living in an apartment, but even in some of these businesses that have been brought as part of the developments that have come up.
Thank you. And
Rebuttal,
Mr.
please.
Oh, you have a rebuttal. 30 seconds for the rebuttal.
Yeah, so Sunnyvale has already taken a look at what we can do both individually and as a community. That's in our climate action plan with over 130 different actions. That Silicon Valley Clean Energy was one thing that came out of that, but there are many other items there as well. And we are currently in the process of updating that. So yeah, it is important that we look at it. We're already looking at it. We already have a process. We actually have made that a council priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next question, Mr. Alexander. Please specifically explain the levels of new office and new housing development that you would support and where. Also address how exactly you will provide the necessary infrastructure improvements to support such continued growth, public safety, fire, and traffic.
Okay. Well, again, I want to make sure that everyone understands that I would never put Sunnyvale at risk of not improving its business or the residents' ability to live here. I think that would be ridiculous for me to say that I'm going to stop all developments. I think what needs to happen is a scale back. And the reason why we need the scale back is because I think that we've seen so much development that wasn't looking at the bigger picture of the infrastructure. Now, the infrastructure includes how are we addressing the school overcrowding? How are we looking at safety and traffic? These are things that matter to the families in Sunnyvale. I've seen it so many times where emergency vehicles are not able to get through. The Sunnyvale Public Safety Officers Association wrote a letter to council to say that could you please scale back the development with businesses. So I think that's what we need to start looking at. And then as a council, we'll agree where we would build these developments and what makes sense.
Thank you. Mr. Larson.
So as we develop both specific, look at specific projects, but also develop area plans, we take a comprehensive look at the infrastructure, what's already there, what will be needed in the future. So that's already part of the process, already something that we look at and pay very careful attention to. And things like water efficiency, new developments are actually often more water efficient than old developments. So our citywide water use has stayed flat even as population has gone up, and this has been true for the last 20 or 30 years. Public safety is well. We keep track of our response times. Those have been steady. Very proud of that. Also, I've been talking with the public safety officers. I'm endorsed by the Public Safety Officers Association because they know that I will make the decisions that will continue to keep Sunnyvale a very safe city. Thank you.
And you're asking for a rebuttal. Go ahead, 30 seconds.
I think it's hard for anyone to think that the traffic has gotten less issue over the last 5 years. I think it's hard for anyone to debate that the schools have become more crowded. I think it's hard for anyone to debate that the public safety officers are taxed because they're having to work overtime. Now, all these things are a factor, and I believe that that's something that needs to be addressed when you put your vote into the ballot in November.
Thank you. And now we come to the last question, and we will start with Mr. Larson because you were the second one to start at the beginning. So, please state and answer a question you wish you had been asked.
Well, I'm glad that you've already asked about housing. I think I would ask a question about who supports you in the community. And my answer to that is that I have a very broad base of support. I've worked hard over the last 5 years to make this city a better place for all of the residents. And so I have endorsements and statements of support from many different people. I have almost 200 people around the city who have put up my lawn signs. I have endorsements from many organizations, business and labor, try getting them on the same page. The Mercury News, the Sierra Club, the Public Safety Officers Association, many other local organizations as well. So I have a very broad base of support, and I look forward to continuing to serve you, and I humbly ask for your vote on November 6th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Alexander, what question do you wish you had been asked?
I think I would have liked to have been asked if the way that campaigns are financed, if we could see a reform in that area. One of the thoughts that I thought that would make sense is if you're receiving more than $2,000 from PAC or some sort of developer, and those types of projects go up to vote, why not recuse yourself from voting on those things? I think that's something that really means a lot to people, that they want people who are in leadership, that they can believe in, that there's no embodiment of any type of feeling that there's anyone owed anything. Now, what I owe to you as residents, since I've been completely 100 individually financed, is my best for you in Sunnyvale. So if you're ready, I ask that you vote for me and vote for me, and I ask you that we can work together for a change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's give them a hand. And so now we will take just 2 minutes for them to come down, and we'll get the candidates for seat 2.